So we're live, and I'm doing this from in front of my TV because they're getting ready to conduct a press conference, and we're gonna try something where I'll jump into my assessment here quickly, and I've got some questions in front of me from folks that submitted them, and then when the press conference starts, we're gonna try something where it's a bit like a hot take or something like that, listening to the commentary and providing some interpretation. Um, so let me just start by saying uh, my expectations for this were low. They were somewhat bolstered by the audio interview that President Trump gave on Air Force One. The tone changed to one where he was discussing the possibility of sanctions, no deals about Ukraine without Ukraine. Uh, these were terms that indicated that he actually was paying attention to his preparation. Kind of unusual. It's notoriously hard to prep him. He only takes in a few data points at a time, but he listened to this and internalized it to the point where he could respond to questions and kind of repeat the highlights. So that's a good thing that he was taken seriously. I think, he's a showman, and when he showed up on the ground, he gave the honors to, I, deserved or not. Of course, Putin is a war criminal, but he did, the red carpet and kind of just treated him like a head of state, regardless of the fact that this guy's a war criminal and has been attacking the U.S. consistently for well over a decade. Um, but he kept, frankly, he had a generally mellow appearance. There were one or two smiles, but in general, kind of a somber expression. Um, I think he tried to do a demonstration of the show of force with the four F-22s, a flyover, including a stealth bomber, and really kind of looked relatively stern. I think that the riding the beast, the armored transportation for the president was pretty absurd. That's another gift. So we're starting off with a point where Putin has been gifted a bunch of things that he wanted, elevated to world leader status after being, kind of ostracized as a pariah, and then, this really quite a positive image that he could translate to his domestic audience and some allies around the world. And I wonder if that is a effort to, give something to Putin, and then now what Trump is going to potentially look for a payback. That might be a little optimistic. I'm going to go ahead and admit that. But given where we're starting and how badly this can go, um, I could see that potentially being one of the scenarios on the rosy side of the spectrum, with a bunch of scenarios on the bad side of the spectrum. So we'll see shortly. I've seen Dmitriev. I've seen some of the staff for both Trump and Putin walk out. So they're really quite close to coming out here and conducting this press conference. So some questions that we received thus far. Can Ukraine keep all their land? Will they ever be a member of NATO? I think it's unrealistic for Ukraine to re return to their 1991 borders, which means deoccupying and regaining control of Crimea and the Donbass, the areas specifically that the Russians have been occupying since 2014. I think that it will eventually happen. I think, we're talking about historical scale timelines. So a generation from now, when Putin is no longer leading his country, and there's a desire for the Russians to normalize relations, I think that's going to be an important criteria. So I think those territories are likely set aside in the short term. But I think there's quite a realistic scenario in which some other territories are returned to Ukrainian control. Uh, not the most satisfying outcome, but it's probably realistic given the circumstances and how hard the war has been, both for Russia and for Ukraine. With regards to NATO, I think it's a matter of time. I've said this before. I think under the Trump administration, it's a non-starter. But down the road, in terms of providing ultimate security guarantees, I think that's where we end up to ensure that Ukraine doesn't remain a target for Russian aggression, like the Baltics would have been if they were not part of NATO. How do we define the summit? Is it not a legitimate summit? Dictators slapping each other on the back. I mean, there's a scenario in which Putin, and it's been reported now that Putin came in with maps and tried to delegitimize Ukraine. He pulled out historical documents that make this Russian imperial claim that Ukraine was never an independent state, instead of the fact that it's been struggling for its independence for well over 3 centuries. And do that those things carry really any weight? I think that because one of the reasons that we went from a one versus one format to a um, kind of a multilateral three uh, uh, to three in the a small group, and then a 5 to 5 aides in the larger group, is because there are people that know more about this issue, like for instance Marco Rubio, that would be in a position to provide some counsel on the spot, and keep the conversation moving in the direction that Trump wanted. So I think they had probably a bit of a game plan going in, and they and I I think Trump not doing this on a one versus one basis, except for some small talk and that beat the ride in the beast, um, is showing the fact, as strange as it is, he's showing concern that he might not be able to kind of masterfully navigate this, and that he needed some support. One of the few times he seems to be willing to rely on staff. He did the same thing, frankly, in the lead up to the bombings on Iran, where he leaned on the military expertise in order to be able to navigate something that was way outside his skill set, knowledge base. So I think that's one of the scenarios, to ensure that this doesn't completely go off the rails, and Trump doesn't get kind of one-sided view of the world. What does that mean? That means that I think this is initially largely focused on figuring out if there's common ground on Ukraine, and if there's a path to closing the chasm between the Russian Ukrainian side, and the U.S. could potentially play a mediating role if there's a need to do a second summit, tri-party summit. I think that was probably the first part of the conversation, and maybe if they had a larger conversation, and it's not. I mean, I'm just looking at the folks that are seated in the crowd. Um, it's hard to tell if it's the entirety of Putin's kind of delegation or not. Some of the folks are clear. Um, whether they actually got to the economic portion, whether they got to the this big potential for some business deals, or whether it was mainly focused on the Ukraine issue. So I think that is the way I'm seeing it right now. I think Trump definitely wants to show a win after what's happened so far. They've been meeting for about 3 hours and change, 3.5 hours. So I would think that there is going to be some announcements. Um, Nothing. I don't know. I mean, we'll see in a few minutes. There's no need to kind of speculate. Let's see what else we have here. Trump stumbles accidentally into positive summit progress. Can it help reestablish relations with our true Western European allies? If he agrees to give away our natural resources to Russia, is it conditioned on congressional approval, or can he just use our resources for an old bribe extortion of his choosing? I mean, it's this conversation. I'm a little bit puzzled about this resource conversation. Remember that Russia is the largest country in the world. What resources is it that we think that they want? I mean, the idea here is that they've got access to all sorts of potential. We don't need their oil. We don't need their gas. We've got plenty of it here in the United States. Um, they have massive stockpiles of rare earths, things of that nature. Um, there's not so much a resource deal as a potential for them to, maybe the idea is that they invest into some of our ventures or something of that nature. I think the idea is that they brought some finance guys, the guy that manages their sovereign wealth fund and things of that nature. I think there's a misunderstanding about like exploiting resources in the US. It just is a non-starter. I don't see what we get out of that. Um and they also brought up something which kind of shows their thinking. They brought up the idea of cooperating on climate change, which is something they troop out like periodically, but they forgot that they were dealing with the Trump administration instead of like Obama or Biden, where that kind of topic and policy would actually curry some favor and favorable views. Trump could care less, but they mentioned that they mentioned infrastructure and they mentioned economic deals. But again, hard to really see besides like real estate deals or something like that, what this is all about. In terms of what controls there are, um, one of the things is that Russia is sanctioned. A lot of Russian entities are sanctioned, and the Congress actually is congressional legislation is governing those sanctions, and the administration could waive under certain criteria sanctions like they had to do with regards to this delegation because a number of these folks are under sanctions. Um, in cases of national security, there's another contingency in case like the country is actually progressing. Obviously, that's not the case. Russia's not making progress in this case. So, um, in terms of sanctions, I think it's does Congress rubber stamp some of these things? Potentially, but yes, Congress actually has oversight responsibilities and leverage from legislation if they choose to exercise it. And certainly, the Dems could, make a ruckus about this issue because, again, it's some of this has to do with law. Um, let's see. Uh, I'm trying to think. I've had a number of press engagements today. Some really good commentary um, from Mike McFall. Um, I think one of the things that came up that was I think interesting is the fact that like in a lot of ways this is has some hallmarks of a classic style summit. U.S. Russia in the past, U.S. Soviet Union, where kind of, and this is what exactly Putin was looking for. The two big players have a powwow about what's going on and make kind of carve up the world and make decisions. And unfortunately, for several decades, we understood that the world had fundamentally changed and that the European allies had a role to play. And certainly under previous administrations, the Europeans and the Ukrainians wouldn't have been marginalized like this, but they're sitting on the outside looking to see, just like everybody else, minus some inside contacts with U.S. government officials, how this plays out, and then deal with the aftermath. So what that really means is that they're preparing for the range of contingencies. They're preparing for a scenario in which this doesn't actually work out all that great, and then the U.S. is party to sanctions and ratcheting up the pressure on Russia. They're prepared to look at scenarios in which the U.S. walks away from Ukraine, and that they're going to be left holding the bag and having to provide support to Ukraine. Um, they're looking at scenarios in which um, this is in large cases a meaningless summit, and things were kind of returned to the day before. But Putin elevated and feeling more confident and muscular. So I think that's where the Europeans' headspace is. I think other authoritarian leaders, most notably China and Xi, also quite interested in how things are unfolding here. If there was a deal, it looks like Stephen Witkoff just walked in to the conference room. So I think at this point it's just like final touches on preparation um, before going in. So it looks like they're getting pretty close. Um, I think the Chinese are, trying to figure out what did Putin manage to accomplish. 3.5 years of war. You had a summit. This was like one of those opportunities where Trump could showcase himself as a deal maker. Nothing happened, and that very well may, on the margins, kind of adjust their calculations on what they could do in their own backyard and what kind of repercussions they could face. And this is in light of the fact that the U.S. already blinked on their Trump with regards to this tariff war with China. So I'm trying to see. Let's see, what other questions do we have coming across here while I filibuster for a minute and see whether this thing is about to start. Okay, so thoughts on Congress holding secondary tariffs. I think certainly there's a movement, and um, Senators Blumenthal and Graham actually have advanced legislation. I think it's got like 81 signatures at this point. So basically, just about all of the Senate on board to move this, but it actually won't get a vote unless the president signals that he's interested in doing something like this. And even under Democratic administrations, what they struggle with is how much authority they want to give over to Congress, how much they want to tie their hands. So it's possible, but unlikely that they're going to get the green light to vote on this. And then, of course, the House would just follow suit if they're or with the signals from the White House. Um, but I think that's certainly one of the things in play, and it would have a bite. Mm, um, I'm just looking through some questions here. Give me a second.
It seems he wants to try to do away with to correction bodies or actually put them more firmly under the control of one of his appointees. People came out on the streets against it, even during wartime.
I'm just scrolling through, seeing if there's anything I haven't answered. Yeah, to the Putin war criminal, certainly he's under. There's a warrant for his arrest, and 123 signatories to the International Criminal Court. He would have been arrested for showing up on their soil, but he got a relatively warm um, reception and a pat on the back, and then a ride in the beast. Um, ah, yeah, that's pretty funny. Surprised Witkoff was able to find his way back from the men's room. Hmm. So
Just what the Russians have been fighting so hard for the last 2 years to really keep making massive progress is something that we just get that to them in some,
yeah, I think there's a comment about the counterintelligence threat. Elmendorf Air Force Base hosting. Um, Frankly, I'm not sure if they're permanent there, but certainly we saw F-22s and B-2 bombers. I think it's a fairly significant Air Force footprint, and everything that the Russians can do to collect on this opportunity, whether that's signals, so instrumentation on their aircraft for um, whatever they could pick up with signals. The photography itself maybe not all that critical, but looking at the security footprint, all those types of things, and of course, there's the risk of stay behind. Anything that these venues probably are going to be really thoroughly checked to make sure that there's no kind of stay behind to be able to collect on U.S. military secrets after this is all said and done. Um, see, can Rubio be trusted? It's interesting. I think certainly the Senate thought that he could be trusted. I mean, he received what 99 votes, if I recall correctly, and the expectation was that he would be the steady hand. So he'd be able to restrain Trump's worst instincts. I don't necessarily see that playing out thus far, and I think there's a feature. And hey, Justin, thanks for helping me with this. When I hit a pause, Justin's my assistant and chief of staff. If I hit a pause and you see some question in here, actually just write it in here, and it'll be back. Even if you're repeating yourself, back in the thread, so I could answer it that way because it's hard to scroll. Sorry, some housekeeping. So where were we? Oh yeah, so Rubio. So I think the bottom line is that he certainly hasn't. This I see Yushikov moved back in there, so it's the foreign policy advisor. Okay, Besant, Radcliffe, yeah, they're all walking back in. Lutnick, Hegseth. Who else do we have here? Oh, then we get what's your face? The liar. I don't the press blonde. Um, So they're about to walk in. So this we'll switch that. But he hasn't thus far. And then there's a feature of these egos where they think that they'll be there right in the nick of time when when really the worst hits the fan. But it never seems to play out that way. They never seem to have the fortitude to kind of stick around. But yeah, the last few people walking in right now. So we'll see. We'll see what we learn here shortly. Best case scenario for Ukraine is that and I don't think as long as this meeting is gone, I don't think we're there. Okay, there's Marco Rubio, is Witkoff, is that this was a total bust, and that this is going to be Trump ratcheting up or levying sanctions and then supporting Ukraine. I find that hard to believe, but let's see what happens. Mm, um,
This job here because we're getting very close. We have the guidance now that we're inside 2 minutes.
inside 2 minutes, according to the news here.
Here, it seems that one of the principals now entering the room, the defense secretary, the secretary of state, but I guess trying to
If Trump announces a peace deal, it's largely irrelevant. I mean, the fact is that the Ukrainians have the wherewithal to continue to resist with what they have and what they can get from the Europeans for the foreseeable future. Um, Even this one kind of tactical breakthrough that the Russians have achieved seems to be getting managed by a couple of Ukraine's premier units, Azov Brigade, really Azov Corps and 92nd Brigade are dealing with that and kind of looking at that. So Russia really has, from a military standpoint, no real prospects in the near term. They could terrorize the population, make things hard, and so Zelensky doesn't have to. This is the problem: is we sometimes overstate what we can do, even as the U.S. as an actor. Okay, so we've got them walking in.
I think with all of these getting interject as we see both these world leaders take the stage for just like Putin and President Trump. Let's listen to time.
Our negotiations being held in the constructive
Putin goes first.
respect. Again, there is now negotiation. The word common useful. I would like to thank once again.
Constructive, defined by Putin. Thorough. Thanking Trump.
Is our country is although separating the oceans, close neighbors.
This friendly language about neighbors.
I said, good afternoon, dear neighbors. Good to see you. In good health. And to see you alive.
Trump is smiling a lot more. That's some interesting body language. Maybe feels like he got enough.
Which severing by the Strait of Bering, there are two islands only between the Russian island and the US island. They're only 4 kilometers apart. We're close neighbors, and it's a fact. It's also important that Alaska has to do with our common history between Russia and the US, and many positive events have to do with that territory. Still, there is tremendous cultural heritage back from Russian America. For example, Orthodox.
The historical relationships.
Geographical names.
Yeah. Is now laying out some claims about Russian roots.
Other equipment near the Lend-Lease program.
Okay, then referencing Lend-Lease, where we floated the Soviet military.
To the South Ice. However, the pilots of both countries did everything to bring closer to victory. They risked their lives and they did it all for the common victory. Was just in the city of Magadan in Russia. There is a memorial there dedicated to the Russian demons.
Well, this is fluff. There's a question about Zelensky's reaction. One of the most shocking things is that, this is a warm reception compared to how Zelensky was treated in the Oval Office, which was frankly disgusting. And that alone, that contrast is really quite striking and jarring.
Careful with taking care of their memories. I think that's
still talking about World War II, which is something that Russians love to talk about. Of course, they suffered massive losses, but it's part of this idea of Russian greatness tied to that the victories in World War II.
Would build and foster mutually beneficial and equal ties at this new stage in the hardest conditions. It is known that there's been no summits between Russia and the US.
So looks like he's reading a prepared statement, which is interesting. And a lot of this is actually prepared ahead of time. Most of this is not new, except for the beginning, how he categorized the conversation as, fruitful or something of that nature. That was a fill-in at the last minute.
The confrontation between dialogue, and in this case, a personal meeting between the heads of state has been rolled over.
Yeah. So just most of this is boilerplate, kind of prepped way ahead of time, and to roll out if it was somewhat productive from Russia's side.
We've spoken multiple times. We spoke frankly on the phone, and special envoy of the president, Mr. Woodcuff, traveled out to Russia several times. Our advisors and
Putin loves Witkoff. He's got somebody that he could talk to and run circles around in a lot of ways.
What's the situation around Ukraine? We see the strive of the administration and President Trump personally to help facilitate the resolution of the Ukrainian conflict, and his strive to get to the.
Well, maybe Putin's going to nominate Trump for Nobel Peace Prize. We'll see. It's very flattering.
Ukraine with fundamental threats to our security. Moreover, we've always considered the Ukrainian nation, and I've said it multiple times, a brotherly nation. However strange it might sound in these conditions, we have the same roots, and everything that's happening is a tragedy for us.
Referred to Ukraine as a brotherly nation with similar roots or same roots.
Putting an end to it. At the same time, we're convinced that in order to make the settlement lasting and long-term, we need to eliminate all the primary roots, the primary causes of that conflict.
Wow. Primary causes of that conflict.
Russia, and to reinstate a just balance of security in Europe and the world on the whole. And I agree with President Trump, as he said today, that naturally the security of Ukraine should be ensured as well.
So the primary roots are Ukraine with its own military and with a Western Western-leaning democratic government. That's what he wants to address those roots.
Revenge in the works. They will not make any attempts to use some backroom dealings to conduct provocations to torpedo the nation progress.
That Ukraine will be the one that torpedoes progress. Interesting. I don't know. Not particularly good language.
Trade started to grow up. It's still very symbolic. Still, we have a growth of 20%. As I've said, we have a lot of that.
Talking about what?
It's clear that the U.S. and Russian investment and business potential.
I mean, there's really like hardly any trade whatsoever. So this is 20% growth of nothing is really nothing. So this is just pleasant sounding language. It's troubling to hear his comments around Ukraine, and that he mainly that the underlying reasons for the war need to be addressed. That doesn't sound like a ceasefire is imminent.
Not far away from here, at the border between Russia and the U.S., there was a so-called international dateline. I think you can stack over literally from yesterday into tomorrow. And I hope that's what succeeded that in the political sphere. I would like to thank President Trump for our joint work.
I think Putin likely feels like he's kept Trump on sides. Yeah. We'll see what Trump's response is.
Clear idea of what he would like to achieve. He sincerely cares about
Trump.
His nation.
Really likes his relationship with Putin, so it's hard to see
its own national interests. I expect that today's agreements will be the starting point, not only for solution of the Ukrainian nation, but also will help us bring back business-like and diplomatic relations between Russia and the U.S. And in the end, I would like to add one more thing. But to remind you, in 2022, during the last
some agreements were reached.
The previous administration tried to convince my previous American colleague that the situation should not be brought to the point of non-return when it would come to hostilities. And I said it quite directly back then, that's a big mistake. President Trump said
so Biden's fault that there was a war.
There will be no war. And I'm quite sure that it would indeed be so. I can confirm that. I think that overall...
That sounds very, very pleasing to Trump. But all super cosmetics.
Trustworthy contact. Yeah, but every reason to believe that moving down this path, we can come sooner better to the end of the conflict in Ukraine. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. President. That was very profound. And I will say that I believe we had a very productive meeting. There were many, many points that we agreed on. Most of them, I would say, a couple of...
Wow. Not a good place to start.
We got there, but we made some headway.
Trump agrees with Putin. It's an interesting headline. Very reminiscent of Helsinki.
In a little while, I'll call up the various people that I think are appropriate, and I'll, of course, call up President Zelensky and tell him about today's meeting. It's ultimately up to them. They have to agree with what Marco and Steve and some of the great people from the Trump administration who've come here, Scott and John Radcliffe. Thank you very much. But we have some of our really great leaders have been doing a phenomenal job. We also have some tremendous Russian...
Interesting. He's not reading anything. I don't think I see a teleprompter. He's going off the cuff.
Anywhere in the world in a very short period of time. And we look forward to that. We look forward to dealing. We're going to try and get this over with. We really made some great progress today. I've always had a fantastic relationship with...
Not shaping up to be a good outcome. Made great progress today.
Many tough meetings, good meetings. We
haven't heard anything about a ceasefire. We haven't heard anything about a second summit with more with Zelensky involved.
During the course of his career, he's seen it all. But we had to put up with the Russia hoax. He'll lose a hoax, he'll lose a hoax. But what we said was very criminal. But it made it harder for us to deal as a country in terms of the business and all of the things that we'd like to...
It was pretty low energy and tired.
This is over. So just to put it very quickly, I'm going to start making a few phone calls and tell them what happened. but we had an extremely productive meeting and many points.
No substance.
Yeah,
No substance whatsoever. Productive meeting, many points agreed to. So basically,
significant.
right now,
Chance of getting there. We didn't get there, but we have a very good chance.
Putin
I'd
scored,
like to think.
and Trump is walking away empty-handed. I mean, I'm not sure if I could call it completely, but that's what it's looking like.
You're almost as famous as the boss, but especially this one might over here. But we had some good meetings over the years, right? Good productive meetings over the years, and we hope to have in the future. Let's do the most productive one right now. We're going to stop really 5, 6, 7,000, thousands of people a week from being killed, and President Putin wants us to do that as much as I do. So, again, Mr. President, I'd like to thank you very much, and we'll speak to you very soon. And
So no ceasefire announced.
thank you.
No. I mean, we're gonna. This is all just
Oh, that's an interesting.
empty talk.
I didn't eat on that one, but I could see it possibly happening. Thank you very much.
Okay. Wow.
Thank you all.
And that's Putin just pulling out the stops and potentially accepting a meeting in Moscow, and that's it. Not taking any questions. So really, he didn't want to walk away empty-handed. He looks like he did, and nothing concrete announced, and he's settling for pleasing sounding words. We'll see. This is on the worst side of the spectrum, not the good side of the spectrum, the worst side of the spectrum of how things could have turned out.
We are watching.
We'll see what the next steps are. Probably pretty severe terms on Ukraine in order to achieve the ceasefire.
President of the United States saying,
Yep. Could be a waste of time. It looks like it's a waste of time, but at the same time, elevating and legitimizing Putin and dividing our alliances and putting more pressure on Ukraine. So, yeah. I will take the opportunity. I think I'll scan quickly, but probably just pull together something as things kind of unfold over the next couple of days. If we get some more information, or if I'm seeing something from the Ukrainian side, but appreciate you all listening in. It's a bit of a cliffhanger, but my take is not much to show, so it's pretty disappointing. But
Absolutely no details.
all right, thank you for listening in, and until next time.
When Putin was speaking with the word agreement,